This is Steve Jewin, aka Stevie J, from Glove Up or Shut Up on AngryMarks.com. We have some breaking news to append to this show. When we recorded this program, we had not yet learned that Jose Aldo was declared unable to compete due to his rib injury at UFC 189. The new main event for UFC 189 on July 11th in Las Vegas at the MGM Grand Garden Arena will be Chad Mendes and Conor McGregor fighting for an interim featherweight title, with Jose Aldo presumably uniting the title down the line. The co-main event remains the same, Robbie Lawler defending the welterweight title against Rory McDonald. That's your UFC 189 update. Now please listen to the rest of Glove Up or Shut Up, and if you like, join us on Facebook at tinyurl.com/gloveup to show your support for this show. You can also find us on Twitter at AngryMarks and at HardcoreCDN. Thanks and enjoy the show.
You're listening to Glove Up or Shut Up on the Angry Marks Podcast Network.
You're listening to Glove Up or Shut Up on AngryMarks.com with Peter H. and Stevie J. Find them on Twitter at HardcoreCDN and at AngryMarks. And now, for all the news, reviews, and interviews in mixed martial arts, it's time for Glove Up or Shut Up from AngryMarks.com.
And welcome everybody to another episode of Glove Up or Shut Up, right here at AngryMarks.com. My name is Peter H., and I'm joined once again by my co-host from Omaha, Nebraska, Stevie J.
Hey, America! What happened to you, America? Don't forget Jesus!
What are you talking about?
Yoel Romero's infamous post-fight promo after the fight night this weekend.
I missed the post-fight promo, so please do explain. What are you talking about?
Well, after he took down Machida and hammered the heck out of him with elbows for the TKO, he was interviewed, and this is what he had to say, more or less. America, you forgot about Jesus. Don't forget Jesus. But he has such a thick Cuban accent that the way he said it and how it sounded, people thought he was saying, America, go for Jesus, not for gay Jesus. And gay Jesus started trending on Twitter within seconds.
No.
And CM Punk was tweeting out rainbow shirts of his fist saying, where can I send one of these to Yoel?
Oh my God.
Yeah, look at the top 5 trending Twitter topics. Gay Jesus and Yoel Romero were in the top 5 on Saturday night.
Wasn't this weekend like Pride weekend as well?
I know. That's why a lot of people were reacting to this. Like, really? Yoel, why are you, no pun intended, crapping on our parade here?
Oh, I see what you did there.
Yeah.
Okay, so we got UFC Fight Night to talk about, which the card was mixed up. We talked about that last week with all the visa issues. We're going to talk Bellator 139 with Chick Congo in the main event. And we got lots of news talking about Reebok, talking about Madison Square Garden. We're going to talk a whole bunch of different topics in the news today. But let's start off with the main event. You mentioned it off the top. Yoel Romero beating Lyoto Machida in the third round, minute 38, with a KO via elbows.
Yes, and unfortunately, that should have been the highlight of the night. It should have been a positive note everybody left on. Look, we got a new contender. He won in front of his hometown fans in Florida. Everybody was super excited about it. And then he starts this, America, what happened? And, okay, he's cut a lot of promos about God and Jesus, and he's wearing a John 3:16 headband or hat, whatever it was. And I'm like, is he gonna cut a promo on gay marriage here? And he didn't exactly say that. And in his post-fight press conference, he tried to deny that's what he was talking about. He said he was just talking about the American dream. Well, America, what happened to you? That doesn't sound like he's talking about the American dream. It sounds like he's saying that we ruined the American dream somehow. It's very delicate. He's, like I said, he's denying that's what he meant.
So you got Cuba versus Brazil, and he's talking about America. And some people on Twitter...
He's an adopted U.S. citizen now.
True.
He loves America. He just thinks that America lost their way because we forgot Jesus.
Well, his nickname was the Soldier of God.
But really, I can't believe you missed this promo because it's all anybody could talk about.
No, sometimes real life gets in the way, but I do want to say that you see this on Twitter and everything else where, like you said, gay Jesus, and it's just...
And it's all in how you hear it. Like
I know.
Our friend Ed in San Antonio said he played it back 7 times he heard gay Jesus and 3 times he heard forget Jesus. So it just all depends on how you hear him. But he has such a thick accent that when he tries to cut this promo in English, it's really hard to tell what he meant.
It's funny. Some people on Twitter were saying when that decision was read that, screw this, I'm moving to Canada. We've had it on the books since like 2005.
Yeah,
so
it's legal everywhere now. You can't, people who want to flee, good luck, cause you can't go to Canada, you can't go to Mexico, wherever you're gonna go, it's dumb that people think they want to leave the U.S. for this.
Well, some people said they were going to the States when Obama took office too, right? So, Obama should have just said, you know what, if you want to leave, leave.
Well, a bunch of pastors said they were going to set themselves on fire if it was legalized, and I haven't seen that happen yet either.
Well, I saw the best response to that. Someone was saying, so you're arguing with this, so your solution is to become flaming?
Nice one. I hadn't heard that, but that's good.
Anyways, let's move on. Machida here, I mean, it was a close fight. After 2 rounds, I had it 19-19.
Yeah, I thought Machida outpointed him in the first, and I thought Romero was starting to tag him pretty good in the second. He came close to finishing at one point.
So the 3rd round, Machida just got taken down, and when you're on your back defending elbows from Romero, get up. Just get up now, because 5 of those elbows is all he needs.
Yeah, I think the first one actually knocked him out, and the rest were unnecessary after that, because that dude has some big, jacked up arms.
He's definitely got the muscle going there, and
yeah, we'll see how the new drug testing policies
I know.
him.
I was so tempted. I was going to try to dance around that, but it's like, you went there, so it's like, okay. I mean, it was in Florida, so I don't know. I mean, if it was in Vegas, there might be more strict there, but with the UFC having the new drug testing policy, they could knock on his door anytime, day or night. Excuse me, urine sample, excuse me, like.
They can literally show up at, you can be at the gym, you can be at a pizza parlor, you can be at home.
Yeah, a kid's birthday party.
They can show up any damn where you are. You actually have to, give them a schedule of the places you frequent every day, every week.
What's they do for Olympic athletes?
Yeah, this is Olympic level testing. That's what we're at now.
Yeah, and if you look at the light heavyweight rankings, middleweight.
Yeah, I was like, wait a minute.
Wait a minute, yeah. Cause he's fought in both, that's why I was like.
I know you're getting confused, and Romero certainly looks like a light heavyweight again with all that muscle.
He goes up 3 spots to 3, Belfort down 1 to 4, Machida down 1 to 5, Bisping up 1 to 9, and Ladies down 1 to 10, which is very interesting.
And Bisping Ladies is coming up very shortly.
Yes, exactly. And there is a funny story here about the middleweight champion, Chris Weidman. There's an Ottawa Senators player named Chris Weidman, but it's spelled slightly different. It's like Weidman.
Yeah, actually I pronounce it Weidman.
So when Weidman for the Senators just re-signed a contract for I think 1 or 2 years, and I'm like, don't get him confused with the UFC middleweight champ. And one of the Sens fans I have on my Facebook goes, "Oh, I think he could take him." I'm like, I have some magic beans I could sell you.
I think Chris Weidman could probably take any NHL player with his name or not.
Mm-hmm. It's, I can't wait to see him back in the cage, and it's too bad we're not going to see it in New York, but we'll get to the New York story in a bit.
Right.
Lorenz Larkin against Santiago Ponzinibbio. Thank you.
But just call him Zombie Bibio because this man just walked through every punch until the one that dropped him. I was watching Lorenzo Larkin just tag him over and over with hooks, and I'm thinking to myself, how many shots does this guy need to be dropped?
Yeah, it took a while, but second round, 307, the victory for Larkin, and not a big surprise here, to be honest.
Not really, but it is an impressive win for him in the weight class. He's finally found a good fit in UFC.
Yeah, well, it's UFC's the big show, right? So.
Right, but I mean, this is basically living up to the expectations that everybody had for him back when he was a Strikeforce fighter. You know, people thought he was going to be this super stud, and now he's actually getting to do it because he's a good fit at welterweight. He is able to be faster and stronger than two straight opponents now, John Doomsday Howard and Santiago Ponzinibbio. It's two impressive wins.
And the thing is, he doesn't even go up in the rankings. He's not even in the rankings at this point.
Well, that's because he had taken 3 straight losses before that. So, you know, it's the start of the turnaround, and personally, I think he's like bottom end of the top 15 in welterweight, but it's probably going to take one big win for most other writers to consider him that.
If you look at the bottom 3 right now for welterweight, you got Kelvin, LaFleur, and Nelson.
Yeah, and I can, in my own personal list, I can easily drop one of those 3 for him.
LaFleur?
Gastelum.
Really? You dropped Kelvin out of the top 15?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, he's not even a welterweight right now. Listen to what Dana White has had to say about him, and you'll agree with me.
No, I remember that. I remember that post-fight press conference. I saw that. Yeah, I mean, if you want to move him to middleweight full-time, but if he wants to fight at welter and can make that weight, I mean, let's see what his next fight is like, and if he misses the weight, and Dana's like, you know what, you're a middleweight now because you're not a viable fighter at welter, then put him in the rankings for middleweight.
As far as I'm concerned, it already is, so we can move on.
Well, one last thing. If you put him in middleweight, do you put him in the top 15 automatically, or does he have a few fights at middleweight before he cracks the top 15?
I think Gastelum needs a couple more fights at middleweight to earn it.
Really?
Yeah.
I think you take out Conor, put him in there at 15.
Maybe you have them fight each other.
It's not a bad idea. I've heard worse ideas. Antonio Carlos Jr. beating Eddie Gordon with a rear naked choke at 4:37. This was a one-sided butt kicking, and this is just like a mercy thing at the end of the third round.
Yeah, I really wonder what's going on with Truck Gordon. This was supposed to be the new and improved Truck Gordon. I don't know, maybe the truck was in the shop for maintenance or something.
Yeah, I always get nervous when I hear a fighter's new and improved. It's like, what, 20% less suck? I mean...
Well, part of it's not his fault. I mean, he was severely outsized in this fight. Shoeface was a gigantic fighter in this fight. I mean, it looked like 2 different weight classes completely.
His last 3 fights, lost by knockout, lost by decision, lost by submission.
Yeah, and he basically, I mean, Shoeface has fought at heavyweight. He fought at heavyweight on Tough Brazil, and then he went down to light heavyweight, and now he went down to middleweight. Eddie Gordon could have done better and probably should have done better, but this was a gigantic fighter for him to fight.
But if you're 1-3 in your first 4 UFC fights, you're on the edge right now.
I think the only fight he won was the fight I saw him fight in Vegas.
Yeah, Diego Lima. He knocked him out in the first round at 111.
I mean, they're not going to cut him because he's an Ultimate Fighter winner, but shit, he needs to get his shit together.
He needs a tomato can fight to get back his confidence.
Speaking of tomato cans, Steve Bossy just got KTFO'd 29 seconds into that fight with Thiago Santos. Man, did he get creamed.
I was like, alright, time for oh shit. Yeah. Left shin hits chin. It's lights out.
Yeah, that's a highlight reel knockout. It was the second one in 2 days, so we're going to get to Bellator later, but man, man, it was a thing of beauty.
Well, the one in Bellator was better in my opinion, but this is a very close second. Santos was Santos. I mean, what can you really take away from a fight that lasted less than 30 seconds?
Not a whole lot. They want to go to the replay of the highlights of the fight to show the whole fight.
I'd say bonus it, but it was already on the main card.
Right.
Let's move on to Hakron Diaz against Levin Mashkevili. Diaz wins the split decision here. I had no problem with this.
Yeah, 2 out of 3 judges got it right.
Yeah. On the prelims, you had 3 decisions out of the 4 fights. The only fight that did not go to a decision was Tony Sims knocking out Steve Montgomery in the first round at 2:43.
Yeah, I was kind of sad about that because Montgomery was the guy from Ultimate Fighter who didn't make weight and got taken to the hospital and was eliminated from the show. So I was like, oh, great, he gets a second chance now because we didn't get to see him on Ultimate Fighter. Oh, shit, he's done.
Yeah. There is one fight I do want to talk about, and it's Leonardo Silva against Luis Gonzalez. I
figured you'd want to talk about Cowboy Oliveira, but go ahead.
I have a problem with this fight because if you're debuting in UFC, make weight. I mean, I understand a pound, okay, 171 for 175. You make the weight, but you're on the edge of, wow, you really should have hit the gym more or sauna or whatever. Maybe next fight, try to be around 170 on the dot, 170.5. He was 174.
Well, this is part of the reason they're saying USADA is going to tell fighters what their weight class is.
Really?
You hadn't heard about this one?
No, this is news.
Yeah, they're going to actually measure fighters at their natural walk-around weight and tell them what the safe level for them to cut is, and that's their weight class.
Which is a good idea. I mean, it'd be healthier for the fighter and it'd be safer. Then you got certain fighters who are going to get pissed off because, well, I fight at this weight class, but I walk around in a completely different weight class.
Yeah, there's going to be some shakeups in the rankings in the weight classes coming very, very soon.
And the thing is, long-term health effects of consistent weight cutting, we don't have those results because mixed martial arts, as far as weight cutting, has only been around for, 10, 15 years?
Yeah, but we do have the results from collegiate and amateur wrestling because that's well known and people have died. So there's a reason that they want to limit the amount of weight cutting people do.
Yeah, but collegiate college wrestling, that ends when the fighter is 21, 22 at most?
Right, but these
guys are cutting weight into their 40s.
Yeah, well, 30s. That's the problem. They're taking that wrestling mentality with them for the rest of their lives as fighters.
I have no problem with fighters fighting at what they should be as far as weight class is concerned.
Or I'd say, you know what, if they can't eliminate weight cutting altogether, which nobody really thinks they can, then like I said already, they have to set a target. Like, okay, if you walk around at 225, we believe you can get to 205. We don't believe you can get to 185, but 205 you can probably make it safe.
But Stevie, I'm a welterweight. I fight at 170.
Nobody weighing 225 pounds should be fighting at 170. Nobody. No fucking person on earth. Pardon my language, but this is the exact problem we had with Anthony Rumble Johnson.
I knew you were going to say that. Yes. Exactly. And now look at him. He fought for the title at light heavy, a couple weeks ago.
Right. And he's so much better off at light heavyweight. It really is his weight class.
Now, you mentioned so before we mention the next fight, Silva beat Gonzalez with unanimous decision, 30-27, 29-28, 29-28. Moving on to the fight you mentioned, Alex Oliveira against Joe Merritt. Cowboy.
He's the only guy in UFC other than Cerrone who deserves to have that title.
Well, he won his fight, 30-27 across the board.
Yeah, it was pretty one-sided, but I think it's more interesting the fact that he's just on a tear lately. The only fight he lost in his last 6 was to Gilbert Burns by an armbar. And that was late in that fight. That was with 50 seconds left to go in the 3rd round. So you could almost throw that one out. This guy is on a tremendous monster run.
Not many people got a high payout after this fight. The whole card, I should say. Romero took home $66,000 for the victory. Machida, for losing, took home $200,000.
Well, he is a big UFC star and a former light heavyweight champion, so.
No other loser took home more than $12,000.
Well, we did get some performance bonuses here. Fight of the night went to Larkin and Ponzinibbio, and performance of the night went to Romero and Santos. So Romero gets another $50,000 on top of his fight bonus and win bonus.
Yeah, I mean, the submissions were nice, but I could see Romero and Santos taking home the performance bonus here.
Yes, indeed.
Moving on to Bellator, and boy, what do you say about this one? Chick Congo against Alexander Volkov. Congo wins by decision, 30-27.
It wasn't that bad.
Oh, come on.
It wasn't lighting my world on fire, but
I was watching a Ben Askren fight.
all I could say is Volkov showed me less than I expected. I thought he would be able to stand and trade with him. I thought he'd be able to avoid takedowns. But you know what? Congo said it when I interviewed him. He talked about the fact that he knew what happened in the Emmanuel Newton fight, King Mo fight. He wasn't going to let that happen to him again. He went and trained at the body shop with Antonio McKee. And obviously he didn't just learn to stuff takedowns. He figured out, I can be a better wrestler than this guy. I'll take him down and I'll beat him up on the ground. And that's why I can't completely take a crap on this fight, because it's not like Congo was inactive. You could see the blood of Volkov on his arms from him grinding him up on the ground.
Yeah, it's just, it wasn't the most exciting fight, and exciting fights, especially for Bellator, they need exciting fights, not fights that push you to sleep.
I don't think it was a snoozer. It wasn't lighting the world on fire, but I was just impressed by how thoroughly Congo dominated Volkov, because this is a former champion after all, and he didn't look like it in this fight.
So for the fans who watched the tentpole show and expecting the same type of performance on this card, you know, you had some fights that went to decision, and you know, you had some fights that were highlight reel knockouts, but don't expect what you saw at the tentpole show every time Bellator puts on a show.
No, and quite frankly, some of the reason that happened at the tentpole show was because they stacked up fights that they wanted to make a statement with. They picked fights to look explosive on TV and got what they were looking for.
They cherry picked.
I wasn't going that far, because they weren't throwing tomato cans in there.
No, but they cherry picked fights in the sense that they put two fighters in the cage they knew that would perform to the casual fans' expectations of what makes it an exciting fight.
Yeah, I would say you're right about that.
So Congo wins 30-27 across the board. Moving on to this co-main event, John Alessio and David Rickles, and
This
wow,
was unfortunate.
what do you say?
This was unfortunate.
It was deemed a no contest at 2:21 of the very first round. Unintentional illegal knee, and Rickles.
And right at the point where the fight was about to be stopped.
Yeah, Rickles was winning the fight, but it's that early in the fight where they can't go to the scorecards, so.
Yeah, it's the 2/3, 3/5 rule.
And Alessio, when he got rocked, the fight was taken out of him at that point.
Yeah, they gave him all the time in the world to recover. They asked him if he wanted to continue, but you know what? He had already taken such a beating even before the illegal knee. There was really no chance he'd want to continue.
No, he was close to losing. I don't think you rematch these guys, but if you do, don't make it anytime soon.
No. Honestly, it pretty much goes down as a win anyway, because he was fighting in Mulvane. The crowd there was hugely behind him because he's from Derby, which is like just down the road.
Mm-hmm.
And they went nuts for him, and he apologized for being over-aggressive, and they still treated him like the victor. You know what? He won in everything except for throwing the illegal knee.
Well, let's move on to the highlight reel knockout of the night for this weekend, and that's Hisaki Kato knocking out Joe Schilling 34 seconds of the second round.
With a Superman punch.
Yeah, and he was out before he hit the mat, I think. He was just one of those perfectly timed, spot-on punches where hit it and you're going to win the fight instantly.
Yeah, he was out before he hit the ground. In fact, Kato was trying not to throw another punch, but the referee was way out of position all the way across the cage, and Kato is looking at this mighty oak that just fell in front of him thinking, what do I do now? Nobody's stopping me. I better throw one more punch. And he gets one punch on the ground, and immediately the referee is there. He's like, he was standing there trying not to do anything because he knew that Schilling was out, but he was given no choice because nobody was stopping him.
Now, do you find this an epidemic in Bellator where the referees are out of place, or is this an off occurrence?
I think it's random. I wouldn't say there's a pattern.
Okay. Pat Curran against Emmanuel Sanchez, and Curran does what Curran does, win fights.
Yeah, well, this one honestly was more of a snoozer than the Congo fight.
I think what you felt about Volkov, I felt about Sanchez here, where he didn't show up to the best of his abilities.
No, but this was probably a bigger test for him than any he'd had previously in Bellator. I don't think he'd fought a world-class fighter like Curran yet, so he'll learn more from this loss, because Curran just picked him apart.
Now, we had some great fights on the prelim card. Did they bonus the Brown-Bohe fight?
I didn't see it. They didn't show it on Spike.com, and I don't think they aired it on television.
Well, it lasted 29 seconds. Brown wins with the TKO punches.
I think that must have been the post-Bellator swing bout, the dark match.
Yeah. Another note from the prelims, Bubba Jenkins beats Joe Wilk in second round at 1 minute with TKO punches.
Right, and that was the big comeback fight for Jenkins after Georgia Karakhanyan.
He needed that fight, and he got the victory.
Yeah, well, it was kind of expected, because Joe Wilk, again, this is what you would say, it's not a tomato can, but they were cherry-picking. They knew that they could get a good fight out of these two.
Anything else in the prelims you want to talk about?
I think that's going to do it.
All right, let's move on to New York City. Once again, it did not pass. It did not go to the Senate. They did not have the votes because of stalling and a lot of delays in the
well, here's the stupid
House
thing about
Representatives.
it. Let me explain, because I've heard it explained to me, and this sounds incredibly dumb, but apparently this is how it works in Albany. Because they have a democratically controlled legislature, they don't want to pass any bill that they can't get a Democratic majority for. They want to have enough votes for it that the Democrats can pass it without any help from the Republicans. So you need like 76 votes to have the majority without having to reach across the aisle to get anybody from the other side. And they had 72. So they weren't even going to bring the bill to a vote without 76.
They had 76, but the reason is, with all the stalling and basically the session going into overtime, a lot of the representatives were out of the Albany at this point because they had other business to attend to.
So
they lost the 4 votes.
Yeah, they had them and they lost them. Some of them went home.
Yeah. And they can't do their vote by proxy, apparently, so they lost the 4 crucial votes that the Democrat Party was like, we're not going to pass this. We don't feel comfortable doing it. But the thing is, they should have just passed it because UFC, the mixed martial arts bill had Republican support as well. That's the worst part. It would have passed.
Right, and especially they had gone out of their way to craft a new amended version of the bill that included increased insurance for fight venues and regulation of all amateur MMA fights. They got everything they wanted. Every Republican objection would have been met. And it's because they didn't have enough votes and they got all this pressure from the Food Workers Union that they didn't even try to bring it to a vote.
So the show on December the 5th is not going to happen in New York. And UFC Canada is trying to pick up the ball here because, hey, we could take an extra show, no problem. Here's the problem. Winnipeg, Ottawa, and Vancouver all have NHL games in their rinks. Now there's one big city that does not, or 2 big cities that do not, and that's Montreal and Toronto. They both have road games that night. So, we could see a game in Montreal, we could see it in Toronto, hell, we could see it in Alberta, both Calgary and Edmonton. Edmonton still has not had a UFC show. Edmonton, Ottawa is still the only 2 NHL teams, cities not to have a UFC show. But there's also other Canadian venues that might be getting a show as well. So somewhere where they're going to have their first off show as well. But December the 5th is usually a big show. They have a proven track record of going to Montreal in December. So I would really think if they're going to have it on December the 5th, it'll be in Montreal, perhaps Toronto. And that's all it is really with that day, because if you look on the calendar for the 12th of December, a week later, if that's where they want to postpone the fight, if, they want to move that date around to the 12th, you won't have Montreal and you won't have Calgary, but you still have Toronto. You can have Ottawa as well. So, there's still some wiggle room as far as hockey is concerned, but without looking at the venue's event calendar for the month of December, keep in mind we're still in June. There might be something. I remember there was a Stanley Cup Finals playoff series got delayed 1 or 2 days because of Dora the Explorer, because it was a sold out show 3 nights in a row, and they booked that venue. I think it was in Calgary or Edmonton. And they booked the venue months in advance thinking, well, Calgary and Edmonton, whatever city it was, they're not going to be playing hockey in June. So yeah, no problem. We can book the venue for 3 days in June. And then it happened, like, oh crap. What did we do? So they couldn't, reschedule the Dora the Explorer show. So they rescheduled the schedule for the Stanley Cup Finals to work around it. So when you book something well in advance, you just have to cross your fingers that the entity that is the main tenant of that venue isn't operating on that night.
Well, and who's to say that the UFC and NHL couldn't come to some sort of working agreement like, okay, we know you scheduled a home game for this night, but give us the venue, have them do a road game or have them do the game the next day. We'll pay you a penalty for the cost of taking the venue for the night, and you'll get a huge bonus in terms of your gate revenue for how much we'll bring to your city.
I don't think they'll do that. I think when it comes to hockey, they would set a precedent. I don't think the NHL was willing to do that. The only thing I could see, if it was like, say, Vancouver, for example, where maybe you have a matinee show for UFC, and depending on the turnaround, how long you could take it to tear down the cage, put up the hockey stuff, like, Boston Garden goes from hockey to basketball, for example.
Well, Scottrade Center, I was just there for the Bellator Kimbo Ken Shamrock card.
Mm-hmm.
You could tell how much that venue gets used for hockey, because when they were peeling up the carpet after the show, the floor was wet.
Yeah, that's funny. There you go. Well, as I said before, Montreal, Toronto are probably the 2 big venues, and keep in mind they are going to be in Saskatchewan for the first time in August. So, I still think Montreal's the best bet, if not Toronto, but there is precedent of them having a big show in December, a big quality show. They don't have luck with that in April, for example, because you remember that show was the Curse show, and they pulled was it Jon Jones fight out of Montreal? Or Rashad Evans or something?
Right.
It was some fight that definitely got delayed, but we should also talk about New York for another reason, and that is the UFC debuting the Reebok jerseys.
Yep, it's official now.
What do you think of them?
Not super blown away.
Really?
No.
I like the fact that the country of the fighter, so if you buy a GSP shirt, for example, his name will be on the back, and it'd be like a Canada patch on the arm.
That's a nice touch, but it's just too homogenized for my liking.
This is what the new UFC is.
I know. And that's why a lot of fighters are going to Bellator.
Including the new signing they announced on the Bellator show.
Josh Koscheck.
Which doesn't surprise me, to be honest.
No, he'd taken like 5 losses in a row in UFC, so I think they were happy to let him go.
Well, let's move on to the news, and Sam Sicilia is looking for a new opponent for UFC Fight Night 71 as Don Hu Choi is pulled out due to an injury.
Wait a minute, why are we talking about Sam Sicilia and Don Hu Choi when there's Jose Aldo out there to talk about?
I was trying to see if you catch that. I could just slip that in there before you got me there. Alright, Jose Aldo. Boy, oh boy, oh boy.
Let's start with what we do know.
Yeah, there's so much on this one. I thought I'd throw in some fight adjustments before we got into the hardcore stuff, but...
What we do know at this point is he has a rib injury. It's, depending on which doctor you talk to, it's either a broken rib or a bruised rib.
Or cartilage damage.
Well, bruised and cartilage damage is usually the opinion if it's not broken. But either way, Jose Aldo was in significant enough pain that it needed him to go to a doctor and have it evaluated, and Nova and Yao leaked it out, and it got out from the Brazilian press to the American press, and shit hit the fan. Because everybody's going, oh my god, the biggest fight of the year is ruined. They spent $7 million promoting this fight. They put it as the headline fight of International Fight Week. Everybody's coming from Brazil for this fight. Everybody's coming from Ireland for this fight. This fight is fucked. And UFC started immediately doing control damage and going, no, wait. This fight isn't canceled. Aldo wants the fight. Aldo's not that badly hurt. He'll be ready. And people are going, yeah, Dana, we've seen the reports from Brazil. His own camp leaked this out. It doesn't sound good right now. So UFC comes back with, okay, here's our backup plan. We still think Aldo's going to fight on July 11th, but just in case, if he's not ready, we'll have Chad Mendes and Conor McGregor for an interim title.
And we were talking about this off the air on Facebook, back and forth for a few days when this story broke. Like, we were going back and forth how many twists and turns this story had. And the only reason they're picking Mendes for this alternate fight
is because he was number one in the rankings.
That's the only thing. And the thing is, we've seen UFC do the exact opposite and basically pick whoever they wanted, number 3, number 4, number 8, whatever. But in this case, they're going with the number 1 fighter.
And Frankie Edgar is, I wouldn't say he's outright pissed about it, but he threw his name in the ring for an alternate, and he's, I think, annoyed that they didn't even consider it.
Well, another person who threw their name in the ring was Diaz.
Yeah, but that wasn't going to happen.
No.
Even though Conor McGregor expressed interest in taking that fight. He said he would fight Diaz, but UFC wanted no part of that.
No. I like the McGregor-Mendes alternate fight, but we're not going to see it. And Frankie Edgar, it wasn't like a Ryan Bader situation, but he wasn't too pleased.
No. Although, here's the upshot of the whole thing. Before the word of this injury broke out, Aldo was the money favorite with all the sports books. That has completely flipped. Conor McGregor is now the favorite going into July 11th.
So here's the scary thing. So, this week, Conor's doing the media rounds, trying to pump up the fight for the fight next weekend. Not this weekend, but next weekend. So he's doing the media tour this week.
Actually, he's been pretty much working the media ever since the fight was first announced.
Oh, I know, but this is like his last big push for the fight before he goes into training mode for the week leading up to the fight. Including Conan O'Brien, which I think would be very interesting to see that appearance.
Yeah, that's tomorrow night on TBS.
And usually when you have one fighter who does all the media, the other fighter is just training his ass off to get that little bit of extra edge, right?
But
well, Aldo's not training either. So
he can't. He literally has to sit on his ass and do nothing and hope he heals.
Okay, here's a Todd's Odds question for you. Does this fight go all 5 rounds?
It's probably not going to, because his cardio is going to be a little bit shot without that training. And there is an extra problem here on top of that.
What's that?
Aldo is a big fighter for the weight class. He uses the extra training for cardio to get his weight down. There is at least a chance now that he might miss weight.
What's his walk-around weight?
I don't know, 60, 70? Who knows? It's pretty
Really?
big. Yeah.
Wow.
He's not a small fighter. He's big for the class.
Okay, so if Aldo misses weight, it would still be a title fight for McGregor if he makes weight, but if Aldo wins, do they strip him of the title?
What I've heard postulated, and apparently UFC has said this to at least Dave Meltzer, if nobody else, the situation right now would be if Aldo misses weight, he can't retain the title. Even if he wins, he would be stripped.
So then you would have McGregor playing with house money.
Pretty much. It would be exactly what we saw with Brandon Halsey and Kendall Grove. Kendall Grove had nothing to lose and everything to gain because Halsey wasn't going to leave with the title.
Did you see the Kate Upton Game of War commercials?
Oh, with Conor McGregor slapping away the mic?
Thank you. I thought that was pretty good.
This is war!
Yeah, you get the Should have like a Braveheart thing or something. I don't know.
Well, yeah, it kind of was, because he went from the suit and tie to like a full medieval garb, like the fur and everything.
And he's got that intense look in his eye where you're like, okay, I don't want to fight this guy. I wouldn't want to.
Yeah.
That's going to be an epic fight. I can't wait for it next weekend. And next week's show, we have a huge preview because we actually, in theory, could talk 3 UFC shows next week.
Well, Invicta too, I assume you're referring to.
Okay, 4 UFC shows because there's a fight night next Wednesday.
Right, so gonna be a very busy week.
Alright, so here's the question. And some people have asked me this because I'm covering I'll be on Live 88.5 next week talking the show, on the morning show talking about UFC pay-per-view the Ultimate McGregor card because Rory McDonald's on the co-main event. What do you do with Conor if he loses?
I think he's still popular enough that he won't have a problem if he loses to Aldo because he's got a huge fan base. He's talked his way into the main event, literally, so he's going to be fine, even if he takes the loss. But here's the thing. It's more concerning of whether or not he loses and that would hurt him. It's more like if he wins, how does he win? If he goes for the body, people will accuse him of being cheap and not winning the title like a real champion. But if he doesn't go for it, people will accuse him of having a bad game plan, and if he gets knocked out, people will say, why didn't you take advantage of it? So for McGregor, he's walking into a ramble patch right here. He's literally got very few options for how he can look good in this fight, because he can either win cheap or he can lose bad.
He's predicting a 4-minute KO in the first round.
Well, he's been wrong with his predictions before, not in that he won fights, because he's been winning all of them. It's that he's called for first round finishes before and they haven't happened.
Alright, so let's move on to some more news. Eric Koch is out of his fight at UFC on Fox 16 against Ramsey Nijem. Nijem is now facing Andrew Holbrook, which is sad because I like Koch as a fighter, so.
And we also have a change to the UFC International Fight Week card because Brandon Thatch is not available to face John Howard, so Katal Pendred is coming back on short notice.
Really? Okay, that's a good fight. So the Tough 21 finale, we're going to talk about it next week. We're going to set up the whole show. There is a picture floating around on, social media about Cesar Ferreira's spine. He's got 8 screws in it right now.
Ow!
And he's still going to be fighting.
That doesn't sound like a good idea.
I get why he's fighting because it's his, that's his livelihood, right? But
I'm surprised the athletic commission would medically clear him for that.
Yeah. 4 months before he fought Sam Alvey, he underwent spinal surgery.
So he was hurt going into the Alvey fight, is what you're telling me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, no wonder Alvey had such a great performance.
He had 8 screws put into his spine as well as a disc prosthesis.
That just doesn't sound good at all.
I'm surprised he could still, walk. Again,
it doesn't surprise me now, knowing what Sam Alvey did to him. I mean, we were kind of shocked at how great his performance was. Not that we didn't think Sam Alvey was good, but that he blew through him in Porto Alegre, which was basically home territory for him. We're like, wow, Sam Alvey just smoked the hometown fighter in Brazil. Well, now it starts to read a little differently now that you know the guy had 8 freaking screws in his back.
I think he still has them, doesn't he? I mean,
that's what I'm saying. It's like, maybe he shouldn't have taken that fight with Alvey, and maybe he shouldn't be fighting at all.
Well, you know who he's fighting on the finale show? Masvidal. He's dropping to welterweight.
That seems like a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, Masvidal.
Game-bred Masvidal is going to probably, I don't know what the odds are, I don't have them in front of me, but I would suspect game-bred Masvidal would eat him alive.
Yeah, I see this as you said, a recipe for disaster. I think if Ferreira wins this fight, good for him. I mean, he can overcome this injury and, he fought Alvey. He's going to try to make a statement here with this fight here, not to lose, basically. And I hate saying this because we just talked about his spine, but his back is against the wall here.
Yeah, no, I know you weren't trying to make a pun, but it really is because he's lost 2 out of his last 3, so taking another L here could really hurt him.
And Masvidal is no easy opponent. Let's just put it that way.
No. You know what? Masvidal, again, I'm not saying that Ferreira doesn't have a chance, and I don't know what the odds are, but the only fight that Masvidal has lost in his last 4 fights was a split decision to Al Iaquinta.
Jon Jones, he's not going to be going in front of the grand jury for now, as far as his hit and run case is concerned, but the prosecutors are trying to get more evidence. So I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing if you're Jon Jones.
Well, the charges aren't going away. They're just not going to present them. They're waiting.
So
they're waiting.
Does this mean?
Go ahead.
Well, no. Does this mean that it's going to be a situation where his return to the octagon is going to be delayed even further because the prosecution is taking their time getting and collecting and analyzing more evidence in his case, and one day put this in front of a grand jury?
Yeah, they're taking their time at this point.
Is there a time limit? I'm not up to date on my American law, but is there a time limit on how much time the prosecution can take before presenting to the grand jury once this case, happen, between the time of arrest and how much time you have to bring it to the grand jury?
I think it depends on the severity of the charges. I think if we're talking
hit and run's pretty big.
Yeah.
I would say it's probably up to each individual state. I mean, I don't think there's much of a difference, but there might be a difference between what happens in Nebraska and what happens in New Mexico and what happens in New York. There is one interesting tidbit that I did see in the Shamrock interview, and that is simply he will take that Gracie fight.
Yeah, he wants that, and he also wants a rematch.
And there also the realm of possibility he could fight his brother Frank.
That's all out there in the open.
But the next thing on his plate, which I think is a terrible idea, is that bare knuckle fight.
Yeah.
Why is he thinking about bare knuckle fight in his 50s?
He wants to prove a point.
What point?
The point is that you're never too old to do anything if you believe in God.
Have him watch his fight with Kimbo again, please. I know he wants to rematch Kimbo. He wants to fight Gracie. He might fight his brother, but all before that, he wants to do a bare knuckle. He can't announce too much. I think they're still in negotiations, but what commission will regulate a bare knuckle fight?
You're asking me to explain Ken Shamrock? Forget about it.
No, not that. But what state is this fight going to take place? Because I don't know if any state,
He'll find an Indian tribal casino to put on the fight. It doesn't matter. This is Ken Shamrock, and this is what he wants to do.
Shit, I forgot about the Indian reservations. I forgot about that loophole that some promotions go to so they could have, unregulated fights. Mm-hmm. Yeah, anyways.
It won't be the Mohegan Sun, because they're regulated.
Yeah, no, they're definitely regulated. I think that was where Tommy Morrison had his last fight after he got HIV. No state would regulate him in a fight, so they took the fight to an Indian reservation.
But the Mohegan Sun has their own regulatory commission.
Really?
Yeah, they do. Like they have the Indian Tribal Gaming Authority or whatever it's called. I forget the exact name of it, but they oversee it just like the Nevada State Athletic Commission does in Nevada. They're very serious about it.
I'm assuming that applies for wrestling as well.
I would think so.
Because the WWE has their show at Mohegan Sun Casino from time to time doing the Raw Roulette and whatever, so we know that wrestling is still there as well.
Right.
So.
Anyway, is that going to do it for the news this week?
Yeah, I'm looking here. I don't see anything else on my list. I'm trying to think. There was something else about Jon Jones, but I can't seem to find it. But I think it was more just the same story of his case is getting delayed and he's fighting in the gym. It's the same thing we hear about GSP, where he's fighting in the gym. But GSP, there's update on that, but it's the same stuff we've been hearing, is that he's in the best shape of his life. The updated drug rules are now in effect. It makes him happy, but he's still not coming back right now. But there was one extra note that I saw was that when he comes back, he's going to want to come back in the main event, not necessarily for a title, but he wants one more big fight. It's like, they compared it to Diaz, where, Nick Diaz only wants to come back for big fights. That's why he took the fight against Silva.
Right.
So with GSP, and I know what some people, I can already sense what some people are going to guess what I'm going to say here. Maybe GSP comes back, not necessarily for the title, but it could be for the title against Rory McDonald.
I still don't know that I like that idea.
Well, who else would you have him fight if it was a big name fight? He's basically fought everyone in that division.
Do a super fight.
With Jon Jones?
Maybe.
Two fighters come back for one super fight.
I'm not saying I want it, because I've always been against the idea of GSP fighting people above his weight. But if UFC thinks there's money in it and GSP wants a big fight, that would probably be it.
There was the Anderson Silva's idea again. Maybe you fight him with Anderson.
I don't know.
Did you hear about Silva's A and B sample?
Oh, what?
You're like, what now? Silva had 2 samples taken post-fight. One was sent to one lab and one was sent to another lab, right?
Yeah.
They were taken within seconds of each other. Okay? The A lab said he tested positive for the steroid, and the B sample, no, he did not. They're going to bring this up at his hearing in August. Did he really test positive, or was the positive from the A sample a false positive? If that's the case, we could see Silva back. It might lessen his suspension. It might take everything into account. It might wipe everything clean. We don't know, but we could see Silva sooner rather than later now because of this.
I refuse to speculate at this point.
Yeah, I don't know if we'll ever see him fight again. I mean, he's still trying to make the Taekwondo team for the Brazilian Olympic team. So, I mean, right now it's not the worst idea to have Silva back in UFC, but I don't think that's his priority right now.
No.
And if he's suspended, he's suspended. He can't, it's not worth speculating, as you said.
Exactly.
So, that's all I've got. Now, I heard Undisputed Wrestling has, Sonny on the show.
That was last week.
Was it last week? Okay. I just saw the YouTube clip on my YouTube feed and it said this week it's a 1 hour episode.
Yeah, it's a classic episode. It's from the vault, so to speak.
Oh, okay. Okay. Do you know who they have this week?
Let's see. It was, they're doing some stuff with, the Heroes and Legends convention in Fort Wayne, Indiana, so I think
nice.
they've got some guests on from that.
All right,
like Axel Rotten and somebody.
Axel Rotten? That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Any idea who's on tap for Thursday Night AMP this week?
No, probably just catching up on Lucha and New Japan and Ring of Honor and NXT and Tough Enough like we do every week.
And TNA with a big pay-per-view and Global Force Wrestling.
No.
A lot of stuff going on there. I'm sure you talk about the fighters getting released and whatever, or quitting, I should say.
Wrestlers, not fighters, but yes.
Oh, sorry, I'm in the MMA mode still.
Which is why we should stick to that and wrap it up.
All right. Well, for Stevie J, I'm Peter H, the Hardcore Canadian. Thanks for listening, and as I always say, never leave it to the judges. Good night, everybody.
Follow him at Hardcore CDN and follow me at Angry Marks. Good night.
Come on, let's go!